Now, before the break, we were talking about stress and why it's such a big problem for women and how we internalize it and express it in our lives. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about the negative impact it has on our ability as women to be leaders in our lives in corporations, in business, as well as some tips on how to deal with it in a healthy manner. So first off, what ways does stress affect a woman's ability to be effective in their business?
Well, when we're feeling stressed, there's a variety of responses, behavioral and emotional responses that go with that. From the sort of chemical perspective, stress releases what we call stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And when that's coursing through our hormones or through our bloodstream on an ongoing chronic basis, that eventually erodes our body as well as our mental ability to cope. So, for example, some of the physical consequences of being under stress is that you have an increased risk of strokes, heart attacks, chronic lung infections, frequent colds, reproductive issues, and all sorts of things attenuating to the fact that, you know what, your body is not in equilibrium. There is a problem with being too elevated in terms of your stress responses and these nasty stress hormones, which are good in the short term, right? Stress is actually functional in the short term. It keeps us very alert and reactive and able to respond appropriately to threats and stressors. But when it's chronic or ongoing and there's no release or expression for that stress, that's when we run into trouble, like those physical issues. From a cognitive or emotional perspective, stress affects the more primitive parts of our brain. So what we call the amygdala or the fear response. So we're basically in fear mode most of the time when we're under stress,
Yes.
which suppresses the functioning in the front part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, that's responsible for decision making and rational thought and planning. So when a woman is under stress, whether she's in a leadership role in a corporation, running her own business, or being the head of her household, this affects her ability to plan, to think logically, to make reasoned, rational decisions because she's always in an emotional, reactive mode rather than a logical, planful, proactive mode. So of course, it's makes it more difficult to lead your family, to lead your clients, to customers, and to lead your employees when that emotional, primitive part of your brain is running most of your day and is also gradually eroding your physical health.
Right. So just like you don't want to go grocery shopping when you're hungry, you don't want to make important decisions when you're in fear mode.
Exactly. That's not the best place to be
No.
because decisions are not normally well planned out. They are, you really can't see the forest for the trees when you're under stress. Your emotions are basically taking over. The primitive part of your brain is doing the decision making for you. And so decisions made hastily from a stress or fear response, because fear is a form of a stress response. It's just stress is one of the many ways we can react to something. Then the decisions we make are probably not going to be the ones that we would have done had we been able to take a calm look at the situation, because stress always also makes us feel like we don't have much control over ourselves or our environment. So when we feel that threat that we don't have much control, then we're not really in a position to take calculated and educated risks. So for example, being a leader, you have to be the visionary. You're the one who's creating this vision for your team or your organization or for your business, and you have to sell that vision to your clients, to your customers, and to your staff to get them to act on that vision to get to the goals, right? The corporate deliverables or your
Exactly.
business deliverables. But if you don't feel that you can control your environment or yourself sufficiently, you're not able to take the risks to make changes, to cold call those clients, to discipline an employee who may need to be disciplined, or to even take positive or negative feedback in an appropriate manner. So stress clouds our thinking in such a way that it inhibits our ability to lead effectively.
Exactly.